This is Only God Forgives. Hello and welcome to CommonNonsenseMedia. Up for review today is Nicholas Winding Refn's Only God Forgives. Now I'm going to preface this review by stating that I am a big fan of the film Drive that came out in 2011, as a lot of people who are looking forward to this movie are. Drive was pretty much universally acclaimed by critics, but as far as audiences go, it is a little divisive. It has people that love it, and it has its critics for sure. So I was excited to see Only God Forgives because it reunited director Nicholas Winding Refn and star Ryan Gosling, as well as the composer Cliff Martinez. This movie was getting some press, not of the most anticipated or respectful vibe back in, was it April or May, during the Cannes Film Festival. And of course that was a little disconcerting, but nevertheless I was still looking forward to this movie. So it's not really showing in many theaters right now, but you can find it on video on demand, and that's exactly what I did. So I watched it at home, and what did I think? This is a very, very different movie from Drive, and I was really not sure what to expect. A lot of people were anticipating that it'd be very similar to Drive. Not exactly the case. Only God Forgives has a very basic storyline. Ryan Gosling plays the owner of a boxing club in Bangkok, Thailand that is secretly a front for smuggling drugs. His rather sadistic scumbag brother is murdered after raping and killing a 16-year-old girl, and he is not content to really avenge him, but his evil, strict mom, who he's had an interesting relationship with, visits and tells him what he has to do. Drive has the audience that it does because while definitely being partially art house, particularly in its visuals and minimal dialogue and even basic storyline, it's also a little mainstream. It is definitely more mainstream than this movie. This movie is not traditional, it's odd, and it will certainly repulse many viewers. It is not easily recommended. First, before I get into the negatives, which there are some for sure, I will say what I thought about the film that was actually good, what really worked. First of all, and you'll see this in every review, Only God Forgives is easily one of the most beautiful looking movies that you'll see all year. The visual style is of course something that Nicholas Winding Refn always appears to do right, at least so far, that's from what I've seen, and you get a lot of very well staged scenes. The lighting is amazing. It has that definite neo-noir aspect going for it, which I really dig. Not only is the lighting so specific and really interesting to look at, but also there's a lot of use of different colors, particularly red and even blue in some cases, and it's an interesting mood. I think it definitely suits the film. So no matter what, you definitely got style going for you, and that's great for any movie. That combined with the amazing score by Cliff Martinez, it's intense and moody, yet still different from Drive, make for some very hypnotic scenes that put you like in a trance. And that's what I think the best thing this movie has going for it is that it's not a movie in the traditional sense. It's more of an experience. It's definitely art at its artiest, and that's where I get into my problems with the movie. You know, going off of Drive, which I don't really mean to, but you can't kind of help it. This is just totally a different direction, which I appreciate the director did, but it's also so incredibly up there as far as art goes that it's just kind of hard to get into. It honestly felt kind of pretentious at times, and like Nicholas Winding Refn was just trying too hard and had too much freedom, and it really made it tough to latch onto. Ryan Gosling and much of the other cast give kind of muted performances. There's really not much dialogue in the movie, and Ryan Gosling, just kind of stares a lot of the time. If you thought that he didn't do much in Drive, wait till you see this. There isn't really much of a story, or if there is, it is buried very deep, and it's pretty basic from what I've done for research on this movie. The characters are kind of thin and not really likable. You have Ryan Gosling, who surprisingly really isn't the main character in the movie. I really like Ryan Gosling. He's one of my favorite current working actors. Unfortunately, his performance in this was kind of lacking for me. It was a different kind of performance, but it didn't really feel like a full performance. I don't mind these characters that he's doing, these silent, brooding loner types, but I kind of wish he would kind of mix it up a little. Kristin Scott Thomas plays his mom in the movie, and she is probably the standout in this movie. She gives the most of a performance, most like a traditional performance you see in other movies. She's definitely aggressive in that role, and it's interesting, and she's probably the best thing in the movie. And then you have some other actors who I'm not that familiar with. I can't pronounce his name, but there is an actor in this movie who plays Chang, who is basically a cop with this sword. He does a pretty good job in the movie, and he's kind of the main character, actually. And then I want to mention the beautiful Thai actress that's in this movie. I cannot mention her name because I will butcher it. I liked her character, even though she does not say much in this movie, but she was just beautiful to look at in this movie. She was photographed really well. And I suppose Ryan Gosling as well, for all you Ryan Gosling lovers out there. Ryan Gosling is an interesting character in this movie. Upon doing research for this movie, it did appear that there is a storyline underneath. There are some themes going on. It's just that they're so hard to see on the surface. You really have to see this movie multiple times and research it and dig into it, which is a little frustrating, but at least there is something there. Because when I first watched this movie, I was honestly really a little pissed. I was just not getting into it. But then I did some more research and I watched the movie a second time, and it got a little better. Things weren't as bothersome, and I could see some of the things they were going for with the characters being metaphors and the story being about a man who basically wants to fight God and also repair a troubled past and become a new person who can find love. Now, one of the major complaints of this movie, surprisingly, at Cannes was the violence. People were saying it was ridiculously brutal and just incredibly disturbing and just off-putting. I gotta say, I was a little underwhelmed in that department. There were some moments for sure that were pretty graphic or just, really unsettling and maybe went a little too far, but for the most part, it really wasn't that bloody or, grotesque. It wasn't lacking, don't get me wrong. The movie was violent for sure, definitely more violent than Drive, I guess, but I guess it was just a little underwhelmed because I expected more. So people bashing the film's violence, they're not completely wrong, because a lot of the violence in the movie does seem kind of unwarranted or just doesn't make sense why it was there, but it is not by any means that bad as far as the graphic nature of it. Of course, this movie is very polarizing at the moment. It's got pretty much shit on by critics, and audiences are pretty much divided too. A lot of people really didn't like this movie, but there's also a good amount of people that are saying they loved it and they enjoyed it and are calling it, a masterpiece, or if maybe in the future it will be more understood. It's just, I think that maybe, coming off a Drive didn't help matters. So that is probably why it's getting such mixed reactions at the moment. I gotta be honest though, when I first saw it, I really couldn't get that much into it. I really couldn't enjoy it. You really have to think of this movie on a deeper level. Even then, I think it's just a little too artsy for the average viewer, or even film connoisseurs, I suppose, people who really love film. I think it's just too minimalistic. I think the movie should have offered more. I didn't get the complete cinematic experience that I would have liked. I originally actually filmed this review already, and I granted it a poor before I did the research and watched the movie a second time, and now I think I'm going to bump it up to a fair, because there is something that the director is trying to say, but I think he was too much front and center when there should have been more from the actors and the story. So maybe I will actually buy this on Blu-ray eventually, at least for the visuals, which are still really well done. But I'm hoping maybe if I watch it more in the future that it will grow on me. So Only God Forgives, it was a disappointment for sure, but it definitely isn't a terrible movie. I wouldn't recommend it to the average person out there, but if you really were looking forward to seeing it, I would say, maybe do a little research, at least afterward, and watch the movie multiple times. Just, try to understand what was going on, what the intention of the movie was. You really shouldn't have to do that with a movie, I feel. It should offer more on the surface, I think, but it's just a very different movie from what anyone's used to seeing. So just adjust your expectations accordingly. Thank you for watching my review of Only God Forgives. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more reviews. I'll also have a review of The Conjuring and The Spectacular Now.